Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to do some hard rock today, looking at a band we actually just recently checked out, so it's going to be interesting comparing the two tracks from them with such small amount of time between them. It's the last track we checked out still very fresh in my mind. We're going to be looking at Led Zeppelin's Black Dog. And yeah, let's get into this.
Hey, mama said the way you move gonna make you sweat, gonna make you groove.
Okay, I've never heard the title of the song before, but this is a massive song.
Gonna make you burn, gonna make you stay. Hey, baby, when you walk that way, watch honey drip, can't keep away.
Really interesting guitar tone, and also the production on the vocals with a ridiculous amount of spacious reverb. It's also interesting that despite the panning of the guitars, the song feels really tight. I guess just by that I mean that all the instruments feel very close to me. Yeah, I love the harmonies being made here against the reverb. Bass actually had a little bit of presence there as well. Oh, see, the bass is doing the same thing the guitars are doing, kind of hides it a little bit, but the bass has presence here as well. It's weird how it also feels underneath everything. Yeah, playing around with the rhythmic modulation there. Getting up on the ride cymbal, the bell of it. A down-tuned harmony there? Very interesting choice. Interesting. It's a bit of a bluegrassy kind of guitar solo. very bluesy idea. Alright, so here's the thing. These guys are legends. You guys know that. I know that. They are huge. So instead of... Well, I am going to list some of the stuff that I think they did very well, of course. But I also think mostly I just want to talk about some things that caught my attention. Right? Some things that, especially, I know the song. Everybody's heard the song before. It's been in so many movies and pop culture, just in general. I think it's very difficult not to at least heard the verse. The verse is just iconic. And I didn't know the name of the song, and that's something pretty cool about doing this reaction stuff. This isn't the first time this has happened where I've been able to pair a song name to something I've heard in the background before. So that right there is pretty cool. I now know who sings this and what it's called. Before I would just have to hum along that guitar lick and hope that they understood what I was singing, because I'm not a trained singer. So yeah, that's pretty cool. But there's also some stuff, because I've only heard it in movies or on, classic rock radio when I was younger. That's what my stepfather always listened to. And, I never really heard it on good equipment. And possibly it could be part of the remaster as well. But I have older, more mature ears that I'm used to analyzing music with, and I have some better equipment than TV speakers or car speakers to listen to this to. So I'm hearing this with a lot of familiarity, but also hearing it in a completely new light. And there's some things that I want to talk about there, some things that I picked up on that I've never heard before, and that kind of change my relationship to the song. So the first thing I want to talk about, though, is just that this is a jam, right? I don't think there's any part of this, at least especially in modern day, looking at this retrospectively, that is not palatable. It's possible at the time that this was the abrasive music. This was the loud and angsty stuff, and parents were warning their kids not to go listen to it. But in 2022, I don't think you'd find anybody who said that this sounded bad. You might find some people who said they wouldn't listen to it, they wouldn't actively seek it out to put it on, but it pops up in pop culture all the time. Like I said, film and media, that I think people are just kind of used to this being the rock and roll sound, and it's not bad. It's like Queen, right? It's not something a lot of people I think are going to seek out, but they absolutely have no problem with it coming on. Oh yeah, We Are the Champions, right? That's specifically what I was thinking of when I said Queens. Or Queen, sorry. So I think it fits in that pocket of rock and roll that is socially and mainstream palatable, but not something everybody's going to go look for. But it's interesting to think about at the time that there's a possibility this might have been the stuff that parents were actively trying to keep away from their children's ears. But from that angle of being palatable music, at least to my ears, it is it does some really interesting things, right? I'm going to hold on to that for a second, though. This is a jam. That's what I want to talk about. Why this is a jam. So we have this really nice call and response idea that is beautiful. I don't think you can really use call and response poorly. It's going to sound great, really, no matter how you do it, just because there's this really fun element of the back and forth. So we have this back and forth between the vocals and that iconic guitar riff that is just... It has this fun element to it. It's playful. It's light. It doesn't have much weight to it. At least, again, to my modern ears. Um, it has some held out notes, some quarter notes. It has a lot of eighth note runs that are sort of embellishing this quarter note idea. We could play this thing with just really static running on these quarter notes, but he puts in these these little embellishing ideas between the notes to keep it fancy, to keep it light on its feet, to keep it, playful and upbeat. Um, and so we go between that and then these vocals, which have this fun, upbeat element to it. I mean, he's basically yelling with this wide echo, but there's an infectious quality to it that makes me, get pumped for the upcoming guitar line. And this back and forth between these two of, building tension and then delivering on it with energy, and then building tension and delivering the energy. It makes for an infectious jam that you just want to, you're waiting for it. You get into it, you're like, yeah, yeah. And then, the vocalist comes back in and you're like, yeah, you're feeling the tension rising again. You're ready to get back into it. It's just a really fun thing to listen to, and I bet it's a jam to play as well. That is also mostly just the chorus and verse. There is the moment of breathing, right? That kind of provides contrast to these loud, very energetic sections. It's the moaning section. I don't know what you would call it. The part where he's harmonizing with his reverberations. This tends to be, I mean, it doesn't tend to be, it is a slower paced section. The instrumentation's gone, but we don't have that drive coming from the vocals. This is the moment of really feeling the anticipation build and the tension build, because we have the single vocalization, we get that sort of pedal note there against the other pitch. We get the we get this pedal note on every odd hit. And it's providing the distance, or it's providing the reference for the distance of the other notes. Did it go higher? Did it go lower? When we start bringing in the harmonies, they're also bringing in tension, because they're harmonizing not just with themselves, but also with the echoes. And then we bring in the third layer for the final and we have this little slide up into it. It kind of dips down and then slides up. All of this increases the tension of the section, which makes the return to the energy that much stronger. This is a fantastic, this is really a masterpiece at tempering expectations and allowing contrasting elements to really drive home the strongest parts. And the strongest part of the song to me is the energy. It's the drive, it's the jam, it's wanting to, bob your head, move your body, whatever, during the faster sections. And they constantly contrast this with the quieter, isolated movements to make sure that every time the guitar comes in with the lick, you're ready for it. It feels like 10 again. Right? We're not doing this lick through the whole song where eventually it gets boring, and where it started at a 10, now your energy's kind of down to a 5, even though the music hasn't changed. There's always this back and forth to ensure that guitar lick brings the intensity and energy that they intend for it throughout the entire track, especially since it's utilized for almost everything, or at least a variation of the idea is used for almost everything that the guitar does. So yeah, just on the baseline level of what the song is doing structurally and thematically, they nail it out of the park. It's just a masterclass in utilizing contrasting elements to emphasize the strong, the strengths of the track. So that's, like I said, that's the part that I think everybody knows, or if they don't know, they can feel it, right? That's what the song is doing on a whole. That's what I think most people are going to be able to get from it. But there's some interesting nuance in here. The first thing I pointed out was the guitar tone was interesting. I've never heard this before. The guitar tone feels like a lightsaber. Think about it. I'm not wrong. Go back and listen to it. So the thing about it is that normally, we talked about black metal a couple of weeks ago, And that's another style of music that has heavy alteration of the core timbre of guitar. However, when I talk about that, I talk about the core timbre being hidden under the fuzz, and the fuzz is going to be the distortion, it's going to be the compression, it's going to be any of the destruction caused from the overdrive, all of the fuzzy grittiness that makes that metal guitar tone or the rock guitar tone. I always talk about it sitting above the core sound of the guitar, the note itself. Here, to me, it feels like the note is surrounded by fuzz. It's not above it, it's not burying it, it's protecting it. It is this outer fuzz with an inner sound, with an inner note, with an inner core note. And maybe a lightsaber is not perfect. Laser beam might also work, especially when you think of like sort of a modern FX kind of laser beam, where it isn't just this solid beam of energy. It kind of has the fuzzy fluctuation that might be on the outer edges of it as they're trying to simulate the the dissipation of the heat from the energy or whatever, and it kind of gives like a fuzzy warble effect around the outside of the beam itself. That's kind of what I'm getting here. It has this extreme fuzz around it, but it also has a very, and I think this is what leads me to the laser beam element. It isn't this low, deep, guttural fuzz. There is a brightness to the fuzz, and I'm not sure I've heard that before. It could be the timbre shining through it, or it could be something that's being done on the production side to change the feeling, the intensity, the texture of the overdrive, the compression, the distortion, all of that creating this fuzziness around the note. I don't know, but it's very bright. It reminds me of, the guitar tone to me is the color white, right? And I don't know if anybody else feels this way. I don't know. I could just be making some weird metaphors and he's like, what's this dude talking about? But that's exactly how I feel it. It is a strange way of going about it, but I absolutely love it. It is unique. I can't say too often that I've heard guitar tones where the fuzz surrounds it rather than sits under it or above it, which is, to my ear, more traditionally used. I don't know if it's more standard, but it's what I hear more often. And I don't even know how they did it. Like, how do you add width to an effect other than widening the entire sound? I don't know how they did it. I really don't. I'm not a producer, so production and mastering and mixing is kind of wizard's work to me anyways. But this is just on another level. And it's the first thing that stood out to me, and at minute 4.5 when the song was ending, it was still what I was thinking about. It makes the song feel very bright. It gives the entire song a different atmosphere from other rock music. And I really enjoy it. The other thing I want to talk about, though, is despite having this extra space around each of the tones and the ridiculous reverb on the vocals, and I don't say ridiculous saying that it was a bad decision or a wild decision, just that there's a lot of reverb on it. And it's a spacious reverb. It isn't like wah, 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 wah. It's like wah, wah, wah. There's a lot of space between the echoes. It's what creates a lot of the spaciousness, because you hear the center's vocal and then you hear it a little further out, hear it a little further out, and there's some widening to it, and each of these extra hits has a lot of time between them, and it makes it feel like you're in a very large space. You're not echoing around a tiny room where you immediately say something, and before you've even stopped speaking, you can already hear the echo around you, and it more of provides this reverb around your voice. This is an echo, right? It is said first, the release of the note happens, and the next attack is a space of time after the initial release. It provides this feeling of a very spacious environment. But the rest of the instrumentation is tight. It is cluttered. It is claustrophobic. Everything feels very close to my face. And it is an interesting clashing of ideas. I was trying to find a nice word for that concept, but it's eluding me right now. But yeah, the vocals sound like they're in an arena, and the instruments feel like they're in a garage, and it's this clash. And I'm not sure that it does anything to detract from the song. I don't think it adds to the song, but it is something that I noticed immediately, and much like the guitar tone, something I was still quite aware of by the end of the track. It wasn't something that I just got adjusted to or became used to hearing. This was something that, even at the end, was very attention grabbing. How one instrument feels in a completely different environment or different sound sphere than the other instruments in the band. And like I said, I don't have anything to add to that. Why it would be chosen, or if it has any thematic purpose. Maybe when we dive into the lyrics, I'll say, oh, there's something about the vocal line that requires more space, and the way that it's juxtaposed with the tightness means this. I don't know. I didn't even hear the word black dog in here, so I can't even base it off of the title as we are right now. But when we look into the lyrics, we'll see. But as of right now, I think it's an interesting choice. And again, much like the guitar and much like almost everything I've talked about so far production-wise, I don't know how much of this is the original and how much is the remaster. I would like to think that the remaster does nothing other than clean some stuff up, right? If there are some crackles from tape recording or media degradation, maybe what it was the original recording was destroyed a little bit. When they found it, it had crackles in it, so they just removed the crackles and stuff like that, and cleaned it up, and then brought the volume levels up to modern standards and called it a day. That would be my idea of a remaster. You keep the essence, and you just clean up what might have been destroyed over time. I really hope they didn't change too much around, but you never know. So I'm not sure how much of this I can attribute to the original sound or not. The final thing I think I want to talk about is the solos. The first guitar solo came in, and immediately bluegrass. That was the first thing I thought of, and it continued through. I think even halfway through the solo, I said, hey, this is very bluegrassy. And it is. It's a very interesting style of music to pair with what we hear around it. And it wasn't until the next solo came in, and I said, hey, this is kind of bluesy, that I was reminded when we checked out When the Levee Breaks that I made the comparison of Led Zeppelin to being a bridge band between jazz and rock and roll. And I don't know where this came out in relationship to When the Levee Breaks, but it would not surprise me if that jazz influence stuck with them or was a core part of them throughout their entire time writing music. To me, at least after only hearing these two songs and possibly some more that I don't know is attributed to them, again, much like this song, I've heard the song itself, I just did not know who it was by or what it was called. But yeah, I'm getting a very strong jazz element to it, and I really appreciate that. Given the time, given the era that Led Zeppelin was playing, it makes complete sense for blues to still kind of be part of rock and roll. I mean, rock and roll evolved from blues. Not directly, I don't think, but it was definitely an offshoot and was heavily inspired by what blues was doing. So much so that rock is still kind of based on a lot of bluesy chords. Simplified bluesy chords, but bluesy chords nonetheless. And I absolutely love seeing this pocket of history where jazz, my musical area of older, how do I say this? What I grew up listening to and playing. I've talked about before, I've listened to some radio rock. It was just kind of the cool thing to do at the time, but I also grew up playing jazz and classical trumpet for quite some time. So jazz is one of my cornerstone music styles, and hearing that part meeting, the rock part that eventually I would begin to listen to in my teen years, and what you guys have introduced me to, and hearing this bridge between these two sides, of my listening is phenomenal. I love it. We've listened to classical metal that kind of bridges classical music, symphonic metal. We've listened to symphonic metal that bridges my love for classical music with metal music. And I think this is interesting too because it takes the other one of my lesser mainstream musical likes and pairs it with a more mainstream one. And seeing these bridges between genres, it's always nice because it can remind you that music is not one thing or another, that genre does exist. We just spent a whole week talking about what mathcore was, but mathcore is also a lot of things, just like all genres are, and they can evolve and become other things. Music is not fluid. I failed today. Music is not static. Please, nobody screen cap that last one. I do not want to be misquoted. Actually, it wouldn't be a misquote. I did say it. Music is not static. Music is a fluid thing, as is all art. And one idea that we have can transform into another. There is a direct lineage from the early folk musics of, pre-civilized era, I guess you could say, into classical music, into jazz, into everything mainstream, and of course everything that I failed to talk about or failed to mention that came in between those leaps and eras as well. There is a line that draws all music together. And I just love seeing these bridge songs or bridge bands that can, showcase that gap, showcase how one idea became another. And I love it, right? I really dig this rock sound with these jazzier solos and the bluegrass. I'm interested where the bluegrass comes from. I don't have a lot of history knowledge on bluegrass as a genre at all, but I definitely don't have any knowledge about bluegrass's relationship to rock, whereas I can say that there's a very clear through line between blues and rock and roll. I'm not sure where bluegrass fits in there, but it's really interesting to hear it in this track, and I think it fits perfectly. It doesn't feel out of place at all. Even if there is that timbre change that immediately caught my attention. I think there's also a little bit of a production change as well. It is not as bright as the rest of the track. So those are the things that stuck out to me the most. I'm going to dive into the lyrics right now and see if anything pops out. And let me take a second to check that out. Well, that is not what I was expecting. So I'm not sure how the word or the phrase black dog tends to talk about or tends to relate to these lyrics, or even kind of how the lyrics are relating to the music. I mean, it might be a stretch. I'll get into that in a second. Anyways, the lyrics seem to be about a relationship with somebody who wasn't possibly with them for the fame, for the clout. Maybe even being a gold digger kind of vibe. The first three verses are about the intensity of the romance. And then the third verse is about how she spent all of his money and took his car and told her friend she's going to be a star. And the last verse is asking for a more honest relationship. It says, I need a woman who's going to hold my hand, won't tell me no lies, make me a happy man. It seems to be overall about failed relationships based on his status as a rock and roll star and wanting something more honest, more down to earth. Like I said, the relationship to Black Dog, ain't picking that one up. But I do think it's interesting to hear the call and response here because, typically call and response is utilized in a way of unity. One person will say something and the others will either repeat it or say something back in relationship to respond to what has been said. And Here, we do have a call and response. We have the vocalist that takes a turn, and then the guitar takes a turn, but they don't really do much in the way of responding to each other. They're two very isolated ideas. The rhythmic aspect of the vocals, which I think is the strongest aspect of it, there is a melodic line to it, but it sort of hovers around the same note. There's not a lot of vertical movement to the pitch, and it's more of this rhythmic staccato element, right? It's really fast. It is kind of catchy and infectious in that rhythmic way. Plus, it has really great rhyming elements to it that give it a really great flow, as well as paying attention to the meter of these lines. Looking at how many syllables are in each line and ensuring that there's nice flow there. So there's a lot of syllabic and rhythmic and rhyming attention being paid to these lyrical lines, the vocal part, not so much the melodic part. Whereas when you go to the guitar, it's kind of the opposite. There is an interesting rhythmic element there, and I did talk about using the ornamentation to kind of spice things up, but a lot of it is that catchy, the catchy rhythm, not rhythm, the catchy, why am I blanking out? the melodic phrasing, the melody of it, right? So it is a rhythmic staccato line being the call, and then a melodic line being the response. There is this heavy divide between the two. And I guess in a way you could say that this is the differing intentions of the two people in the party. One is looking for the clout, and one is looking for an honest relationship. And the two of them have difficulties lining up. Could be, like I said, could be grasping at straws there, but I think it works. That might not have been their intention, but I definitely think it is a way to read into it. And I don't think it is a bad reading at all. Anyways, though, those are my thoughts on Led Zeppelin's Black Dog. This is where you guys come in, hit me up in the comments, let me know what's going on in your minds, what your perspective is, what your relationship to this song is. If you heard it when it came out, let me know what your thoughts were back then. If you can, I can't remember yesterday, so I don't blame you if you can't remember. Oh, this was 71, 50 years ago. But yeah, just, let me know what your thoughts are regarding this song, and if you have any context, especially around its release. Like I said, I'm not sure about the production of it. I could be hearing the remastered elements, and I'm also interested about bluegrass. If you have any information about bluegrass's relationship to rock and roll around the 60s and 70s, is that what guitarists were playing? I know the blues was popular, and we probably saw quite a few blues guitarists go into rock. I mean, rock fusion was a big thing too, where we saw everybody in jazz kind of moving towards more of a rock feel. But was bluegrass also doing this, exploring the new genre? We see that all the time today, where bands, especially a lot of rock bands, have moved into electronic playing and having like dubstep breakdowns or electronic atmospheres behind the music. So seeing a huge musicianship group of a genre attempt new things and check out stuff that's new, so to speak, that's definitely something we're still seeing today. And I could imagine that some people in bluegrass heard this rock and roll stuff, said, hey, I want to try that out, and maybe that's what led to Led Zeppelin having some bluegrass influence in it. I don't know. But yeah, if you have anything to let me know about, put it in the comments. Above the comments section, there's a description box, and there's a link for Linktree. Take you to this menu right here. It has everything related to the channel. You can follow me on Twitter, support the channel through Patreon, join the Discord community, pick up some merch, check out blocked videos. There's a lot of stuff in there, man. Go check it out. Above the description box, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. That wraps it up no, that does not wrap it up for today. 5 minutes ago, our special selection came out. Go ahead and check that out if you want. We always have some really cool stuff going on in there. Otherwise, I'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 p.m. UTC as usual. we'll be looking at some more hard rock and another special selection. Alright, until next time, remember to be critical but not cynical of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.